Hi, this is Nancy, and tonight I'm going to discuss the need for additional regulation to ensure voting rights for the disabled through HAVA, or the Help America Vote Act. So prior to 2002, three federal regulations addressed voting access for individuals with disabilities. First was the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which provides that any voter who requires assistance to vote by reason of blindness, disability, or inability to read or write may be given assistance by a person of the voter's choice. Second, the Voting Accessibility for the Elderly and Handicapped Act promotes the fundamental right to vote by improving access for handicapped and elderly individuals to registration facilities and polling places for federal elections. However, in this act, no definition of access is provided, and thus allows each state to interpret its own meaning. The act also defines handicapped as having a temporary or permanent physical disability, which leaves mental and/or developmental disabilities open to question. The responsibility for ensuring one is covered by the definitions then falls to the disabled voter. The Americans with Disabilities Act, or ADA, should guarantee access to polling locations and voting machines. However, it allows entities to claim an exemption for undue financial and/or administrative hardship. So thus, the ADA also fails to ensure accessibility. The Help America Vote Act of 2002 was passed as a result of the 2000 presidential elections, in which allegations of biased voting practices were made, most notably those nationally reported involving the state of Florida. The act provides funding to provide education or access to polling places and voter registration. It seeks to ensure civil rights by improving the voting access for everyone. And voting procedures and ID requirements may vary by state, but all states are still required to conform to federal requirements mandated by HAVA. HAVA does have several shortcomings for individuals with disabilities. First, despite the changes in voting laws, restrictive voter identification requirements that are required in order to register to vote still exist in some states. And persons with disabilities may not possess the government-issued identification required and thus are unable to register to vote in those states. Second, polling sites are often inaccessible to those with disabilities, and staff is often not educated about providing assistance or accommodation to disabled individuals. And last, individuals with disabilities may find the design of certain ballots and voting machines difficult or impossible to use for persons with certain disabilities. In 2013, HB 2017, or Amendment to the Help Americans Vote Act, would amend HAVA, and the 113th Congress set goals to first ensure that voter identification requirements do not hinder the ability of individuals with disabilities to register to vote. Secondly, ensure individuals with disabilities have equal access to polling places and to voting systems. And third, to ensure the right of people with disabilities to vote by providing state funding for the protection and advocacy for voter access and enforcement of HAVA. Despite the current requirements demanding accessibility, some state officials still argue that overcoming various physical obstacles in order to vote is a choice for individuals with disabilities. A spokesman for the blind stated at a House hearing that the needs of blind voters are still rarely understood or considered by the states when establishing criteria for certification of new voting systems. To amend the Help America Vote Act of 2002 to improve the operations of the Election Assistance Committee and for other purposes, otherwise known as HB 2017, will reauthorize the Election Assistance Commission to ensure that states comply with HAVA requirements and would closely monitor post-election results by administering post-election surveys. Without additional oversight and reporting, there is little chance that discrimination will cease, as we can see evidenced over the last several decades. This bill, HB 2017, has not been widely publicized, and unfortunately, in my reading, its passage seems improbable, but it does recognize an awareness that additional oversight and action are required to ensure that all potential voters have the right to participate in the electoral process. So the Help America Vote Act of 2002 should be strengthened in order to fulfill its original intent. And also looking into ethical methods for my search, just when addressing those with disabilities who are unable to utilize the provisions of HAVA, we often forget that the homeless often suffer from mental illness and disability in that area. Currently, they're required to supply a driver's license or the last 4 digits of their Social Security number to register to vote, and many of these people can do neither one. Studies have also shown that many polling places are still inaccessible to disabled voters. In Maine, for example, many polling places are still held in older buildings such as churches and meeting halls. In Plymouth, ours is in the Grange Hall, which is an older structure, and these may not have adequate ramps, and certainly they don't have elevators. So this not only excludes individuals who might use wheelchairs, but also anyone who uses a walker or a cane. In 2006, I found that the federal government actually brought suit against the state of Maine for non-compliance with HAVA regulations, and because they were not ensuring full voting access to disabled voters, and a consent decree was issued at that time. For my ethical model, I chose egalitarianism. This is to represent ensuring special provisions to those who are disadvantaged by disability. And inclusion in the group labeled disabled stems from luck rather than choice, and therefore the majority should take responsibility for providing accommodation. Thank you very much. My sources are listed at the end of my paper, and I certainly welcome your feedback.